Hey everyone, welcome to another K6 Office Hours. I am Nicole van der Hoeven.
And I'm Simme, and today we are joined by José Luis Latorre.
Hi everybody, and
Sometimes
happy
with
Friday.
Sometimes it's José Luis Latorre Millas, but that might be
Jose
too
is good.
long.
Jose is good. Let's keep it short.
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually have some announcements first before we get into things with Jose. The first thing is, on Monday, we're moving in with Grafana. We are merging our GitHub organization with Grafana's on Monday, so our repos will be transferred over. How that will affect you? Well, for most people, it won't affect you at all. Links and Git commands will still continue to work. Everything will be redirected. But we will break XK6 extension paths, so those will need to be updated. We'll communicate the module URL we will use when we know that for sure.
And for specifically for extension authors or XK6 extension authors, there won't be any change, because in that case, if you're using the vanity URLs, so the go.k6.io paths, then those will still continue to work. But if you are building XK6 binaries, you're using XK6 and the -- with syntax, then those URLs will change.
Awesome. And then on Tuesday, we have a maintenance window, a planned maintenance where things will be down and all ongoing tests will be stopped. Let me post a link to that. You can subscribe to, oops. For some reason, I'm having difficulty posting a comment to YouTube. Are you able to do that, Simme?
Let's see.
But if you go to status.k6.io, you'll see one of the maintenance incidents there. You can subscribe to updates, so you'll be told when it's happening and when it ends. Looks like that went through for you, Simme. I don't know why mine didn't work. But it's basically just infrastructure update, so nothing to worry about. And it will be from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. CEST, or that's GMT +2. Okay. Welcome, Jose. Sorry about
Nicole.
the announcements first. Tell us about yourself. What do you do?
It's all right. Well, I'm a software engineer. I work at Swiss Life as an architect in the common team in the F2C, face to customer department. And also I work as a lead of the developer community, which we handle a very nice community.
Nice.
Internally. And have some fun every 2 weeks, and now maybe even more.
And I love that that there's actually a K6 there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
So I see you're also a software architect.
Mm-hmm.
And does that involve being in charge of? Were you the one, I guess, who found K6 first and tried to promote it within the company, or was it something that they were already using?
No, they were not using yet anything for this kind of testing. They wanted to, but so far, well, I think it's the same. You see performance testing sometimes, and well, whenever you see these test pyramid, everything is functional, right? There is no performance testing there. So usually, because of that, people used to ignore it. And I think that somehow ISK2B, which is the organization that teaches testing, is somehow ignoring non-functional testing. Not ignoring, but on test strategies, you rarely see that. It needs to be concretely a performance test strategy. And I don't know what's the reason, because it should be integrated on the development life cycle as normal testing. At least that's my opinion. This would save a lot of lives and hours of stress.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with the fact that performance testing is such a broad topic. It sometimes there's a bit of an overlap with functional testing in terms of tools and that. There's also a little bit about development because you can have unit tests for development. And then it goes all the way to the SRE and observability space. So it's hard to have a certification program that teaches it from start to end.
Cannot agree
Just
more.
also it makes it so interesting.
Yes. And what can I tell you? I mean, you're the first one that you will tell me, oh, your testing strategy is biased, right?
Yeah.
I'm
So
telling that
why?
because
Go
probably
on.
if you check Nicole, he has some interesting talks on the bias and performance testing, which are quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, he's talking about a talk I did on cognitive biases in performance testing because there's a lot about human psychology that you have to understand when you're testing for performance. It's not just about making the mechanical parts fast. It's about knowing what to test based on the sometimes irrational human behavior. Hi, Arun. Arun says he is using K6 for one of his projects.
Good for
um,
you.
so, Jose, why did you start using K6?
Well, I wanted to bring in performance testing. Before I've been in some positions where I developed the testing strategy in some previous companies, like, for example, Roche Diagnostics, and I was quite a lot into performance and quite a lot into testing the performance. So it was a very important attribute that we wanted in there. That's why I got into this world, and that gave me a lot of vision. So I learned about psychology, about software embedded into hardware, because we were building devices that are testing, for example, the PCR here in Switzerland and probably in other countries as well. And I participated in one of these projects. And here I learned a lot and wanted to bring a bit more quality. Swiss Life is a quality-focused organization, and we are doing a lot of testing. And one of the things I pointed out, why don't we do performance testing? And well, easily they trusted me, and they told me, yeah, go ahead, do proof of concept, bring it on, and let's look how it works.
Did you get any initial pushback when you suggested doing performance testing?
Not really.
Okay, that's good.
That was, yeah, but
Wow.
I was really surprised because
Yeah.
in other company, which I wouldn't tell the name, after doing that and successfully delivering a project on time, thanks to that, because we discovered 3 or 4 problems that in other projects were really costly. I proposed that to many other projects, and no one had the budget for it. They saw it as a cost and not as an investment.
Yeah. Too many people see
And
the upfront cost, but I think it's really short-sighted because if you think long term, performance testing, especially earlier on in the cycle, can help you spot defects that would have cost way more to fix in production.
right on the spot.
And so I went to your presentation it was on Twitch, I believe, but I couldn't find the link. So I don't know. I don't know if
It's on
you
YouTube now.
that.
It's on
Yeah,
YouTube now.
if
That
you
one
if
was in
you do
Spanish.
find it, we can. Yeah, that's okay. We can just tell people it was in Spanish. But one of the things that you so I wrote down your reasons for using K6 because I always think that's interesting. And you said you liked it because it's open source and there was a lot of good activity on the repository. Did you look at other tools and were you specifically looking for open source tools?
I was, yes, definitely looking for open source tools, but also open to tools that you have to pay for. Mostly what I found were UI-driven tools, which did not convince me, like the one you are thinking now, Gmeter, which is one of the leaders in the market. You were thinking of
You're
that.
reading my mind?
Yes, I do. No, well, I've seen some of your presentations, and also I tried another one very specific for .NET. Well, a couple. One of them was artillery, which is not bad, but they don't really have the capabilities that K6 has. And some of these capabilities are quite recent. So one I particularly love is, I think it came in 0.27. I think it was about June last year. I think it was about the open model. So you care about use and you care about...
That was before I joined. What are you talking about?
That was when we introduced scenarios, right? And then you were suddenly had the possibility to use an open model to do, for instance, constant VUs or constant RPS, which was not current.
I don't know who took that decision or whose idea it was, but you have to definitely keep that person.
Yeah, we...
Yeah, maybe that was Robin, even, who was our CEO. Yeah, so we've definitely kept him.
That's a good thing.
I misheard you, because I thought you said that we should definitely kick that person. So I was like,
no.
Whoops.
Maybe tapping the shoulder, yes. Kick, no.
Yeah, it might have been Robin. It might also have been Ned, who is the lead maintainer of the OSS project. In any case, glad you like it, and we'll make sure to pass that along if they're not watching the stream.
Yeah, and another thing that you mentioned is that you liked it because it's in Spanish. Well, at least we have documentation in Spanish. Not everything is in Spanish. The app is only in English, unfortunately, but we have started the work of translating most of the documentation for OSS into Spanish, and also some of our blog posts are now available in Spanish too.
Cool.
So while we were talking about multi-scenarios, maybe it's a good idea to actually talk about your repository that you created. Let me just share my screen here, because why don't you tell us why you created it?
Yeah, I thought I wanted to, for some time, to come back to public speaking. And I think performance testing is an amazing topic, and the tool is quite good. It has a lot of everything that you want. The performance is good. That are the reasons to pick it up. And also, it's very developer friendly. And I took a bit of time to get all these pieces together. And I thought, why not share it? I mean, SUSE Live is as an open source culture. So if sharing that, chances are people will use it, give some feedback, create some issues that will make this better. And then we simply, it's a win-win situation, right? And this is also that I thought I would have loved to find. So the best example is the advanced workflow, but how to bring together, you always, if you program properly, you program in a CI/CD workflow, and you want to integrate everything, and you don't want any secret in the code. So, or maybe it makes sense to bring these parameters together in. So I put several things together. Also, how to execute with some JavaScript in there, tricky. How to select different scenarios. So I can not only different scenarios, but different sets of scenarios which define the test. And inside that, the scenarios are defined the timeline and how I want to execute. So I have in there, I can choose as a parameter, I want a shakedown, or I want a long running test or a stress test, for example. And so everything is the same code. Yes.
Nicole, do we have this on the awesome K6 list?
I don't know, actually. I haven't put it in. We definitely should.
If it's not on there, I'm definitely going to add it after this stream, because this looks really awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is what you're talking about.
You're still at line
25. but just I see your intention, and that that is enough to.
Yeah, I think the documentation you have is really good. It's quite clear to understand. And the only thing it is needed is, okay, how to combine everything, right? So that's a bit what this tries to do. And also what my session is about.
So these arguments, this is what you were talking about, right? Where you can change the username, the password, that even the type of test that it is, and the environment that the test is run against.
Yep.
And I believe this is for Azure, right? You run this on Azure pipelines.
I can run this on Azure, but this can be run anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
but I mean your use case for it.
The only way to invoke that is external. So I simply create the properties and pass the properties and get the properties from whatever and pass it. So the invoke, you can do that in Azure, in AWS, or any cloud you want. So mine was completely in Azure because I know Azure, but I don't know how to do that in AWS, for example. This test template can be used in absolutely any one.
So can you talk to us about these custom metrics that you've set up?
Yeah, this is an example of how to create custom counters and custom trends, which is these statistics that you have out of the box in K6, but if you need some custom, this is exemplified how to create them. And a bit below, you have the execution tab, which are the type of test, and switch case. That depends on what you put as a parameter. In our case, could be a smoke, the first one. So that's a very shallow test that simply tests that everything works as expected. I'm executing several scenarios. And well, what can I tell you about the scenarios? You know that already. I see some kind of weird line tab or space there, but I'll fix that. And then you add several executions, which are simply try to map your performance test to the reality and show one back in red or different usages of the API. But there's some examples there, nothing more, nothing less.
So this is really good because instead of having to pass each of these parameters or stages or whatever it is separately, you've just defined a set of scenarios that everybody in the organization can use. So, because if you just say smoke test, one person's smoke test might be different to another person's smoke test, but now all they have to say is say smoke and it's going to be standardized. So I really like that it doesn't depend on who's running it.
It's a little bit like when I say that I'm doing a load test, and Mihail is asking me how many users I'm virtual users I'm using, and I'm like, well, 10. Well, that's not a load test.
Well, depends on the scenario, right? Or depends where this is targeted. So if you're going to have 10 users, yes, maybe. I put GraphQL. We love GraphQL, so I put some examples, including authentication. Even I'm not using that there, but I'm showing how to use it. So that's an interesting one. That's it a bit out of the box.
Yeah.
And if you see, I'm putting that, I'm assigning this list of scenarios to these variable, these execution options scenarios. And once this select case finishes, I'm adding that to the options, which is how K6 controls how it works.
And I see you're defining here for the stress part, you're defining like a step sort of scenario that gradually increases over time.
Yep. So the goal is to break it and see then how it breaks and where it breaks to fix it.
It's also good to have the thresholds here that everybody will use.
Yeah, even these thresholds could change, but I think it's good to have some general thresholds. Usually when you have a project, you have a general thresholds for all the project and for all situations. And there on these options, I'm adding this variable. If you see there, give it up. Yeah.
Where, sorry?
A bit more up. Just at the end of the a bit more. Yeah, oops. Yeah, on the options, on the scenarios, I'm
Yes.
assigning the execution options scenarios, which is what where we put this list of options, this collection of options. Sorry, scenarios. And then the thresholds, yes. And then it's just some helper functions. And then I put, I believe, the setup. There is no other options except the ones for the different scenarios. And some debug.
This is really good.
Well, it's a beginning. I think it can be greatly improved. I would call it the MVP, a minimum viable product for a template, but it does the work, and I believe it can help some people.
Yeah, definitely. I think it gives people a framework to start with. I mean, I'm sure that there'll be a lot of modifications that are based on, a team's specific use case, but yeah, this is really great. You
Yeah, for
basically
example, it could
created
be,
what you wish we already had to begin with.
yep. And then I thought, okay, why not to give it away for free?
Yeah.
That
It
seems
can
to
only be
be
better.
something you do quite a lot at Swiss Life, right? That you have quite a lot of OSS projects that you make freely available.
Not me. All the team having done that for a long time. I'm just let myself be influenced by that spirit, which I believe it's quite good. I mean, it makes you grow basically.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds really nice. I see you have a snapshot testing tool for .NET, which is really cool.
Yes, that works pretty cool. We also have, if you go to, can you go back to the Swiss Life GitHub? We have as well a Squadron, which is for testing containers. This one is really
Sure.
cool. So
Ooh.
the Squadron one, if you go there and below, there is people not only inside but outside, so we can mock now MongoDB, SQL Server, Elasticsearch, Azure Blob, Azure Queues, RabbitMQ, some queue managers, Redis as well for Redis Cache, I believe. You can go down. There's some other that are also implemented, some cloud providers. So it's going quite cool, that part, and has a lot of features that you cannot test with anything else together. And it's a consistent way to test something in local or in the cloud. So we are using that to test it in local. So you install your Docker container and you put simply the code and some configuration, and it will, based on your test, it will create your container and then kill it afterwards. And it is, I believe it's an amazing product, and a lot of more support for other services are added lately. So
It
in the last
sounds
year,
like our SRE internally, Daniel, agrees that this
Daniel,
is really
yeah,
useful.
yes, it is. It was really good, and we were considering putting some demos out, not only internal but outside, or put them somewhere, or create some content for it, because it's really good. So feel free to use it and yeah.
So that now it makes more sense that you didn't experience any pushback after introducing people to K6, because they're not strangers to open source and contributing to open source projects.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I was told it's better if it's an open source project.
Nice. And actually, I don't think I've ever asked you. You don't use K6 Cloud, right? I think you just use K6 OSS.
Yeah, so
Is that
far
right?
we did not have the need for that, so we have not yet pushed it that much. But I think it's a nice product. So you can have, for what I've seen in some demos, you can see it. You can have better statistics. But the moment in K6, we are really picky on putting our data outside. So if we have to have
Yeah.
test data, this data maybe have something confidential, which we can put in an internal Kubernetes cluster, but we cannot push it by legal, due to legal concerns in an open cloud, right? So if we do that, that cloud would need to be validated and verified. And maybe
No,
some
I
contract assured.
totally, I really agree. Not everybody needs K6 Cloud, but I just wanted to like let people know that you're not actually a customer,
No, we are
but
not.
just a real user, like in the wild of K6, which I think is arguably a little bit more awesome.
I like it in the wild.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah. Well, because you're actually using it.
Hmm. Maybe we need it at one moment, and then we will probably ping and ask, hey, we need to do this and that, and then we will go ahead. We absolutely have no problem on that.
Yeah.
You can
So
give me a scenario if you
how
want.
often? So is this like a different, I guess, a tamer version of what you use at Swiss Life?
Yeah, definitely. So I remove any reference to internal services and redid it completely just to publish it in external way. Yes.
You even got the batch file here for actually running it.
Yeah,
Nice.
even I should check. I think it will not work, so you should remove the apostrophes. So at least on the test to run, I
Ah,
think.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm. All right.
So
So
you're
can
trying to
you?
execute it now, or
Sorry.
you were copying now the script? You were trying to execute it?
No, no. I was just trying to. I was just moving.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
just trying to see the last bit. And what is this learn K6 thing here?
Oh yeah, these are some scripts that I gave in the talk. So I thought I would put them there as well. So it's a bit of some progressive
Yeah.
learning. If you go back, there is like a bit of how to execute it, lifetime concepts be used, duration and checks, and some more thresholds, stages, scenarios, and some example of close versus open, and also this other more tagging thing, which is groups and tags for identifying some sections of the test whenever you have a big test and you want to identify or group things.
Well, this is awesome. Flora is asking if we've talked about GitHub Actions, but I don't. Do you actually use GitHub Actions? I think you're an
Not
Azure
really.
shop, aren't you? Yeah.
Fleur, it looks like you still work at Microsoft.
Yeah.
Microsoft is pushing really, really strong GitHub Enterprise.
Some context here. Flora is our technical program manager at K6, but she did used to work for Microsoft.
We
Okay,
are not
so
using yet that, but I will definitely probably use them because I'm helping a friend which also works at Swiss Life, which is Michael Stape. Michael works, not works, has a project which is Chili Cream, and they are the developers of Hot Chocolate. Hot Chocolate is the leading .NET library for GraphQL. So I've been like putting some time in developing a bit of a test strategy for them, and developing some scripts for testing the performance of Hot Chocolate, and also to compare it with other GraphQL providers, .NET or not. So they have a goal which is quite ambitious, which is to be the fastest GraphQL library.
wow.
Yep. So let's see if I can give them a help with K6 in there.
So this is an awesome time to tackle this. Oscar says, another real user here not using K6 Cloud. Awesome, we still love you. Is there like a list of repos shared by real users? Just looking to take a look and see how people approach performance. And here's what we were talking about with awesome K6. this is basically it's basically a repository of awesome things that people are doing with K6.
So if you have anything you want to add, if you have any examples of what you are doing, then you could always add it to that list as well. It's starting to become quite lengthy, and it's semi-curated, I guess, but there definitely is some really interesting projects to have a look at in that repo.
Yeah, well, why don't I show some of that as well?
Well,
here we are.
Awesome.
Yeah, and soon Jose's multi-scenarios template will be here too.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, so we have some articles here and some videos, obviously, like not things that we've written, but things that other people have created about K6, but also
Look
a
at
bunch
that.
of examples. What?
The last reference project. I wonder when that got there.
Oh, wow, that was so fast.
Okay. Only that was really fast. Nice.
I know that's the thing about Simme. You just mention something and he'll go off and do it.
That's the only reason I'm here.
No, when he's quiet, he's doing something like that. No, there's some tools as well, converters, and like you were talking about helper scripts. There's some of the scripts here as well. It's just different use cases, and yeah. So Danielle is saying at Grafana tiempo. I think he means tempo. We've got some real tests on the bench folder. Okay. So
I'm reading out the comments now, and it's pretty funny. Summer flavor. I think my background is inspiring you, maybe.
Yeah. Grafana Tempo. So Danielle is a maintainer of Tempo. He works for K6 and was always kind of half in Grafana as well. And now he's actually wholly in Grafana. All right, Danielle, where is this thing that you're talking about? Bench, he said? Yeah, I'm not sure, but we can just get him to explain. Integration, okay. He says. And then bench. Okay. So a little bit of bias here because Danielle does work for K6, but yeah. Here's something that's in the wild and was already in place before we got acquired by Grafana, so a real use case too. So they have their own version of the different types of tests. So yeah, so I hope that that answers your question. Was it Oscar for real users? Thank you, Flor, for pointing out. She says Nicole might or might not have a video on GitHub Actions coming up. It'll be published when people review it. But yes, stay tuned for that. Okay. So tell us, Jose, why? I know that you use K6 with Azure. Were you already using Azure first, or were you using K6 first? Like which?
Azure first. I've been using Azure for some years already. So it's at the moment the platform I like the most, maybe because of my attachment to Microsoft technologies. So yeah, Azure definitely was first, yes.
Okay, and I imagine that was
this year.
I imagine you were using Visual Studio load testing before?
Yes. I've been using several tools for testing, like Visual Studio, that's one. I've been using Selenium for some years already, and also RunRX.
Okay, so was that about the time that you started looking for something else when Visual Studio load testing got deprecated?
Yeah, I started looking for something different, and then I ended up with Selenium for a while, but that was not enough, right? So you had the coded UI tests for one side, which they are for functional testing, and you
Yep.
had the load tests, which at one point integrated with Azure, until they stopped doing that.
Okay.
So yeah, I found the
And
solution for functional, but not for performance.
and how difficult was it for you to integrate K6 with Azure?
It was really easy.
Did you do it yourself, or are you using the actual Azure Marketplace extension?
No. I like when you know what the steps you're giving, right? So at the moment, we did not do anything serious. So we did not distribute the load in different containers. So I did everything on the test agent. So we are paying for some agent. We have some installed on our own. So I did everything on the test agent. I mean, if the load is not really big, you don't need.
I'm gonna put in a link to the load testing extension, just if anyone else wants to run it. It works both with OSS and with cloud, so you don't have to use it with the cloud. But it simplifies setting up and running it. So maybe it's for use for someone.
Were you the one that developed it, Simme?
Yes.
Tell us about it. Tell us how it works.
Okay, so what the Azure extension does is that it does basically the same as you would if you do it yourself. It launches K6 on a runner, and you're able to supply it with some with a test script and some arguments of how you want to run it. But you don't have to do all the steps of installing K6 yourself and getting it into your path and things like that. You just add the extension, set it up as a step, and it runs K6 as you've configured it.
Nice. Okay. Jose, have you run into any issues or problems that you had to overcome using K6 with Azure?
With Azure, no, not really.
What do you do with the results, for instance? How do you visualize the results?
At the moment I use the integration in K6 brings by default. So if you use the open source version, it has a folder where there is a Docker image that brings to two containers. And one is, guess who? Grafana. And it integrates really well with it. So I was using this Grafana integration.
Okay. I think we briefly talked about that. What do you think about the Grafana acquisition?
I think it's cool. And you are now working with a bigger scope, so you can maybe implement bigger things and do bigger things. So I think it's, or get some feedback from this observability platform, which I think it's quite good and also open source. So that's also very good that they have a strong focus on open source as well. So I think it creates quite an interesting synergy. So very curious and how does K6 evolve? Even the last year or year and a half have been quite, wow. I think I simply jump in K6 at the right moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a bonus that you also have been using Grafana.
Yeah, well, it was really easy, right? So I didn't do anything. There were some sample dashboards. You get them, you deploy everything, and everything is already configured to work. You simply have to put the endpoint of the server. I think it's you had this Grafana and then even database that was working behind. So, and that's
I
everything
think
you need
that's
to do.
the general the general feel and plan as well for this acquisition, that I think both Grafana and K6 want to remain interoperable and usable with whatever you want to use. But of course, now, especially now that we have a direct connection to Grafana and K6 are going to work really well and really easily together.
Even
And
better
really, they
than
have
they are
already
now.
been, yeah, they already do work well together now, but who knows?
I'm
We're
curious.
exploring a lot of cool things.
What are the plans, if
Maybe
you
we'll
can
tell you
share?
after
Okay.
after this.
All right. By the way, I put in the private chat 2 links that I tried to share myself on YouTube, but they could not, which are these,
Oh,
the hot chocolate, is GraphQL, and the Chill Cream, which is the organization that is doing that part. So, yeah. So I think it's maybe interesting for somebody curious in GraphQL.
yeah, that's
And
awesome.
Definitely.
yeah.
So, have you ever used Azure Test Plan with K6? I'm asking because one of
long
our customer support people got a question on it,
long
and I've
time
never
long
used
time
Azure
ago.
Test Plan.
Basically, yes. Once it was announced, but they bring it down really quick. So I only play with that. So I cannot really. I don't know what's the question there. Let me go. Marketplace Visual Studio. Okay, no.
No, this is not a question on the stream. I just know that one of
Mhm.
our customer support guys had that
Yes.
question, and I was curious to see if you used it.
Hmm. I play with it, uh, but I cannot say I use it professionally. I definitely cannot say that.
Yeah, one thing that I know that people have been asking for is the possibility to output K6 test results as JUnit. So you'd be able to show your results in the test tab of your DevOps pipeline.
That would be
And
really cool.
yeah, that's something we've been looking at doing. I know that there is some community projects that already do this. I know Ben Coleman
Well,
did something around this that I think still works. But
well, you can.
yep,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say you can already do this with handleSummary.
Yeah, but I don't think we have any handleSummary publicly available that actually does this conversion. So you'd have to do the conversion to the JUnit format yourself, right?
I think it's actually it's in our documentation. I believe. Let me share my screen. I should just leave it on there. Let me see. Because end of test summary. Because I don't know if you know this, Jose, but we now have the ability to change the end of test summary that appears.
There.
And yeah, the handleSummary demo uses JUnit.
That's
Ooh.
actually more than I knew. That's that's really good. I'm gonna set this up in my demo as well, because then you'd be able to see the output not by
Ooh.
parsing the logs from the actual test run, but just by switching to the test tab, which I think
Then
is
question for
excellent.
you. You will see the different thresholds, each threshold, different threshold as a test.
Yeah, that's I think the gist of it. I haven't tried this, so I don't know exactly how this is implemented, but that is
Me
how
either.
the prior community project by Ben Coleman was implemented.
Oh,
I think that
interesting.
makes
Okay,
sense.
so I've tried the code and I've seen the JUnit, but I haven't used it the actual output with Azure. So you're saying that every threshold is going to be a test in that?
Everything that is outputted as a test in the JUnit XML will be shown as a
Ah,
table with pass fail symbols in the test tab.
And that, according to
yeah.
your documentation, is threshold.
Yeah, so then that's what it will show.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really cool. And the thing is that you can essentially just copy this code. This handle summary was a recent thing, though. It was in 0. I want to say 30, but I'm not entirely sure. 29 or 30. So fairly recent. And if you don't specify it, then you'll get just the default. But if you do specify it, then you can do all sorts of things. You can output to multiple formats at once. You can change how the summary looks or what metrics are displayed. So I really love that feature as well.
Yeah, we
Let
actually,
me.
or rather, you did, Nicole, last week when we had a internal hackathon. We had a look at using that handleSummary function to generate a more suitable end of test summary for chaos engineering. So that would actually show you some metadata about the failures you injected into your as part of your test. So it's really useful. You can do quite a lot of cool things with it.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because Jose had sent me a message and I was like, I'm sorry I didn't get to it because we had a hackathon. See, we really did.
I
I wasn't
never,
just avoiding you.
I know.
No, so with the handle summary, Simme has made this awesome extension called XK6 Chaos. And the problem was that we wanted to be able to display results of experiments using XK6 Chaos in the end of test summary. So like now, that's why I knew about handleSummary and what we have on the documentation, because I made it so that we can display like which nodes, which pods have been terminated, and at what time, and whether the application recovered from that. Naveen is asking, Naveen Kumar is asking, is the hackathon open to the public? I'm sorry, no, and it's over. Unfortunately, but hey, you can always do something, and if it's related to K6, I'm sure we'll feature it.
We have been discussing whether we should eventually do a hackathon to the public around, for instance, XK6. So, for you who are watching this stream, if that's something you'd like to see, let us know somehow, maybe in the comments for the video or on Slack, just so we know that there's an interest for that sort of thing, because that has been something that we've been discussing to do.
Yeah, and we've also been talking about Hacktoberfest, and that might be a great time to do that.
Now you have 3 months to prepare, more or less.
Yes, and we started last week, so we should actually be able to be done in time.
Hopefully.
Cool.
So, Jose, I want to ask about ways you think that K6 could improve, because we would love to get some feedback. Are there anything? Are there any things that you tried to do but found a little bit difficult to do with K6?
Well, there's only one thing. Well, there are more than one thing. So K6 is very focused on HTTP traffic at the moment, right? But there are some plugins due to the recent plugin extension that can send messages to queues. That is pretty cool, because I see with K6 you can test either a UI or you can test an API backend. Either it's REST or whichever. If there is HTTP endpoint, you can send information and receive information from it, and that's pretty cool. But I believe that if you want to be fully backend, a messaging interface that is native, that would be great to trigger or send messages to the different kinds of queues that you can find.
Yeah, I know there are some different community projects for this. I think there is one for SQS, and there's also one for Kafka. So there are some of these projects, but I get what you're saying, and maybe that it should be more baked into the actual core.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yes, that would be great. Like something that you can use, and maybe with some interfaces for sending to, I don't know, maybe mass transit, maybe these other projects. Yeah, that would be definitely one thing. It could evolve pretty nicely on the current. I don't know if it's extension or included in the core, but I think it definitely would be cool, because then you can use it not only to attack a public endpoint, but internally to try one component of your service and see, okay, my system under test is just this server. I know I want to hit it with 10,000 or 110,000 calls and see how it scales. So you can test internally system by system. So it could be great. Other thing is, why JavaScript? I love to. At the moment I had to relearn. Well, I've been using JavaScript for some years, but mostly what I use is .NET, C#. And right now, you put people in a dichotomy, because your tool is for performance testing, but it can be used for functional testing. You have HTTP parser, so you can check parts of the HTTP response. You can check the page if it fits or not fits, or absolutely anything, including cookies, right? So you can use it for functional testing and at the speed that not other providers have. If you don't have to check the UI because you don't have support for UI rendering and you don't simulate a browser for a good reason, performance, then I think it has a space. If we could program in C# for implementing a test, a lot of the tests that we do internally for other functional tools like Selenium or other could be replaced. So we have only to code once, and we could reuse that.
Yeah, we've heard that for instance, Go and Python as well, that people would like to be able to write their tests in those languages. It's always hard, right? Because for each language you add as a front end, the maintenance burden really really scales up. So the reason I think, because of why we choose JavaScript, is just because of the commodity of it. Almost all developers have touched it to some extent at some point, so it's not really that big of a learning curve to get started. But definitely, I've heard that from a lot of other people as well. And
no, definitely, you're right. There's learning curve is really small, thanks to that choice of language. So that's great. It was more about reusability.
And on the note about functional tests, we are working on a functional testing solution. Unfortunately, the person who has been the engineer that's working on that happens to be our CEO, who's been a little bit busy in the last few months with the acquisition.
Nice.
So he is working on it. Every time I bug him about it, and he says soon. So
seems quite a plan you have in there.
Yeah. Oscar was also saying that that support for JMS would be awesome, and he also asked about Kafka, but we actually already have an extension for this written by someone from the K6 team as well. That's by Mustafa, who we had on talking about his work on Prometheus Remote Write a few weeks ago. Have you tried it? I haven't actually tried this one yet, Simme.
No, I haven't tried it. I'm not a Kafka person, to be honest.
That sounds like it has second meanings.
Okay, I'm gonna be sorry, Oscar. Don't take this the wrong way, but I'm really not a Java person at all. So that's I'm staying away from Java projects.
So, did you any other improvements that you would like to see in K6?
Yes, so definitely there's another one. We are of observability platform. It would be really interesting. I think it's to support Elastic as well. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think so too. it's quite popular I mean, it's really popular to be used as an embedded service within applications, right? Which I think it's excellent for. So I understand the need for that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's all. It has quite, but from a performance testing that can support all kinds of performance testing, like load, stress. You have basically that out of the box. The only thing, for example, is this. I think it's called stability testing, which is what now it's a new word for it is chaos engineering or chaos testing. You're developing already some tools. This one, I believe, it's quite useful if you want to bring down a container. Maybe something that could bring or trigger some complete service to failure or put a bit of a framework. So in terms of networking, maybe integrating that with Azure, AWS, or GCS, that would be something cool. So for example, I want to bring down this proxy, or I want to bring down this Redis cache and see what happens, right? See what would happen if one service is down.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know networking support is something we've been talking about doing as well in XK6 Chaos. It would be really interesting if you were, for instance, able to use, I'll say, AJ proxy or Toxi proxy or anything, and you'd be able to steer it against the Toxi proxy instead, and say that, okay, but now I want huge latency spikes on the network, or I want every third packet to be lost. What happens to our application in that case? Yeah,
And now everybody may be thinking, what's a Toxi proxy?
Yeah, sorry.
I know what's a proxy. But
so Toxi proxy is this TCP proxy that you can add to your Kubernetes cluster or whatever way you run your workloads. That acts as a proxy that you can reroute your application through. Only that it's not really a regular proxy. It's a proxy for injecting network failures between your containers.
Okay.
So really useful for that kind of work. So yeah, we definitely want to revisit that at some point. But given that XK6 Chaos is currently me and Nicole, we haven't really we don't really have the bandwidth to do that sort of things right now.
And really, it's mainly Simme. I just learned how to. I wrote my first line of Go code last week, so
wow.
I'm not much help. Yeah,
you are.
But
yeah,
but I do like Gremlin's attack library. They do have a packet loss gremlin or attack that can do that. They have a whole bunch of network-related ones as well, which is awesome.
Cool.
Oh, I thought we lost you for a second there, Simme.
No, I'm just fiddling with my snooze, so I didn't want to be gross on stream.
So we missed that.
Okay.
Come on.
So is there anything, so we're running out of time, Jose. Is there anything that you'd like to plug or talk about?
Yeah, thank you. I got the mug you sent me with Bert.
Yes.
Nice.
Look.
And the T-shirt. Yeah, Berta.
Oh, I didn't see you wearing your K6 shirt.
Nice.
I'm not even wearing a K6 shirt.
Yeah, well, it mattered me, so I thought it would be polite to wear it.
Oh, that's not why.
we
not why I
appreciate it, but it's not needed.
Yeah, that wasn't the intention. I didn't even know if it was going to make it in time. I'm wearing a D&D shirt, not a K6 shirt, so
I like it.
And I'm not even sure what mine is saying. I think it says something along the lines of this is a fish holdup, because the fish is actually holding a gun.
Well, probably you can translate that with your mobile.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that, and maybe I'll try it on Nicole's tattoo as well.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Ooh, that's what happens after office hours.
Yes. All right.
No, mine's just
Hey,
like a bunch of
don't forget to love
D20s.
each other. Ooh,
Yeah,
I love it.
in the pride flags.
I love your T-shirt, Nico.
Yeah, it's a t-shirt show and tell, in case you didn't know. So
Cool.
what did you didn't actually plug anything. You just plugged K6.
Hmm.
Was there anything you wanted to mention?
No, thanks for having me. It was really fun to get to know Simme. I knew you, so I've been talking to Nicole. Once I say, "Hey, I'm going to talk publicly about K6," it was amazing. Nicole pinged me, "Hey, that looks very cool. Show it to me. What are you going to show? What are you going to do?" She was even there on the first meeting. Yeah, it was
And
wow.
Danielle
I
too.
said, yeah, Danielle, of course. That was really amazing to have you both in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
It
that's
was
cool.
there would
really
have been
great to
more,
have you
but it
on.
was in Spanish.
Yeah, we did. I was in another one like 2 weeks ago in Luzern in the Zurich in the Luzern user group in .NET Central is the name of the user group, which is led by Daniel Marbach and Ur Sensler. These are fantastic people, fantastic speakers as well. Microsoft MVPs. Flor knows what I'm talking about. And this was not recorded, so it's not in YouTube. But then I will repeat this talk in Azure in an Azure conference in the next days. So yeah, be tuned for that. I think I have the link in there. For
Yes,
Sunday, I believe.
I can definitely post it as well.
And we can also post it on the K6 Twitter. So we'll try to amplify it for you.
Yes.
And it's already in the description of this video.
Yeah, as you said, Nicole, it was really nice to have you on, Jose, and you're definitely welcome to come back anytime you want to talk more about performance testing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Sounds great, and it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone,
you.
and have a great weekend. Hit us up on Twitter if you want to talk about anything or if you want to come on the show. And as always, before we quit, this is the most important bit.
We're hiring.
We're hiring.
I got
it. So have a look at our current career opportunities and let us know if you have any questions or anything. And
Thank
have
you,
an awesome
everyone.
weekend.
Have a good
Yeah.
weekend. Bye.
Have a nice weekend.